Do you believe in miracles? Would you like to see a miracle in your relationship right now? What if I told you that it's possible? Miracles happen every day to people just like you and me all over the world. All you have to do is trust and believe. Hi, I'm Sherry Nichols, and I want to welcome you to The Miracle in You, a show that is dedicated to giving you hope and inspiration. Today, I am thrilled and honored to bring you an interview I did with the leading relationship expert in the world, Dr. John Gray. He is going to be sharing with you how to create a miracle in your relationship by creating that miracle of love and connection. And make sure you stay to the end of the interview to hear about the special gift that was created just for you. Now let's go ahead and talk about love with Dr. John Gray. Dr. John Gray is the author of the most well-known and trusted relationship book of all times, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. USA Today listed his book as one of the top 10 most influential books of the last quarter century. His Mars Venus book series has forever changed the way men and women view their relationships. Dr. John Gray helps men and women better understand and respect their differences in both personal and professional relationships. And what I love about Dr. John Gray is that he is not only a brilliant teacher and author, he is also one of the most entertaining speakers I have ever had the pleasure of interviewing. He cuts through the confusion and he gets right to the matter. So please join me in welcoming Dr. John Gray.
Hi, thank you so much. That's quite an introduction. I don't know if I'm going to live up to my reputation as being entertaining in an interview, but it might be somewhat entertaining. But it's in front of an audience, give me 500 people and you've got quite a show.
Yeah, I think you always deliver more than anyone would expect. So I'm super excited to have you with us today. And John, you in the past, your book about Mars and Venus that is just so popular. And I know when I was reading your new book, Beyond Mars and Venus, which everybody should get this book, by the way. It's a fantastic book. I just finished it. And you talk about how relationships have changed so much. I just want to dive right in, if you don't mind here. Over the last 50 years, that relationships have changed so much because there's been so much of a change in gender roles, really. And so how can we work with those changes so that we can really maintain love and intimacy and create that connection that everyone is craving in their relationships?
Well, if we just look at the outcome of our interview today, let me mention that if we understand where we are now, which is in the middle of a change, there's a little bit of there's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of chaos because there's change for a higher state of relationship. But until we figure out how to get to that place, there's a lot of disappointment and a lot of frustration. And in my own life, I'm in that place. I've always been sort of ahead of the curve a little bit, leading in my own experience of being an authentic person. And the challenge in our relationships today, now we'll go back into the confusing place, but what we're getting to is a place which so many people refer to as soulmate, which is we're actually able to grow and love and sustain attraction for each other, interest in each other, not just love, but passionate love. And how that realistically looks, I will share, because many people have unrealistic expectations, and yet when you look at realistic expectations, we can experience something greater than any generation in the past. But to get to that place, a whole new shift has to take place. So now let's go back to the 50s and 60s, where a major change took place on planet Earth that has never occurred before. And you have to realize, just like the internet is such a dramatic shift in terms of our access to information, true and false, we also have, it's just our lives have technology has transformed life on planet Earth. Something else happened, and that's in our relationships, which are most close to all of us, our family relationships, is that as women broke free from the chains of, we might call, conditioning that said women can only express feminine qualities in their life and men could only express masculine qualities in their life. Back in the 60s, I was out there demonstrating for peace and growing my hair out and talking about free love. It was men shifting from this masculine mold to more their integrating their feminine qualities as well as appropriate to that person. And women were integrating and expressing their masculine qualities, being independent, being more analytical, being more decisive, taking on leadership roles, primarily becoming financially independent and self-sufficient, doing jobs that men traditionally did. This is a huge shakeup. I mean, we don't really recognize it because most people have never lived in an indigenous society like in Africa or in India or in South America in the jungles of the Amazon, where I've gone to study how people have coexisted, how men and women have coexisted for thousands and thousands of years. We have shaken that up. And suddenly we are in, I might say, a higher state of consciousness where we're able to be fully authentic, where women can express both their masculine qualities and their feminine qualities, and vice versa for men. The problem here is now, what are the new dynamics of relationship and what new challenges does that present? And simply put, the challenge looks like this. As women move more to their females and more to their male side, they have a challenge identifying coming back to their female side. As men move more to their and expressing their female side, they have a challenge of coming more back to their male side. And why that's necessary is that on a biological level, on a spiritual level, on a soul level, I'm both masculine and feminine. I have my own unique balance. Every woman has her own unique balance of masculine and feminine qualities on a soul level. But on a biological level, we're still a species that men have certain requirements for male hormones and women have certain requirements for their female hormones. And when those hormones are out of balance, depression, anxiety, stress, lack of love, lack of interest, all these things result in a relationship. More problems happen than ever before, which is really what's going on today in the world. So biologically speaking, men have a requirement to have at least 10 times more testosterone, and some men even more, 20 or 30 times more testosterone, to not be depressed, to be interested in being in a lasting marriage, to be attracted to their partners, to be attractive to their partners. Biologically, we can't ignore that there's this physiology of a man and a brain, which is very, very different, similar in many ways, of course, but different in very significant ways in terms of hormones. And we know today that hormones regulate our moods, our motivations, our interests, what gives us energy, what helps us cope with stress, what makes us feel good. It's all about hormones. And I'm not in any way suggesting that people take hormones. I'm teaching people how our behaviors, how our thinking, how our ways of interacting in relationship trigger different hormones. So we have the testosterone world over here on our male side. And then on our female side, we have estrogen, progesterone, oxytocin, and prolactin. These hormones are all shifting in women all the time, before and after menopause. And the balance of those hormones is crucial at different times of the month. Even after menopause, we see that at the time of the full moon, for example, a woman's hormones double. They shoot up way up in terms of her feminine hormones. And when she's younger, we all know that happens. At the time of ovulation, her estrogen levels will double. And what we have to understand is the psychology that goes along with all of these different hormones, so that we can stimulate certain behaviors to keep our hormones in balance, rather than having to suffer tremendous stress levels, blood sugar imbalances, brain problems, neurodegeneration in the brain. For example, you mentioned Alzheimer's and dementia. My younger sister died of Alzheimer's, and so I've all studied that as well. I've studied bipolar and how my younger brother committed suicide. He was bipolar. So I have a whole aspect of what I do, which is teaching us how to avoid all these conditions, because you certainly can't have a passionate, loving relationship if you're experiencing dementia and Alzheimer's, if you're bipolar. For me, and when I turned 50, 16 years ago, I was diagnosed with Parkinson's, and I found the natural solution for that, which again had a lot to do, not just only to do, but balancing my hormones. At the time, as a man, I was pretty much the average male at 50 with half the testosterone levels I had as a young man. And by understanding new relationship skills and also bedroom skills, as well as some nutritional insight, I now at 65, 66, have twice, not twice, but well, I have twice what I had then and more. I have 25% more testosterone than I had when I was a young man.
Wow.
And this is what is consistent with what you'd see in indigenous society. Men's testosterone levels don't drop. Women don't hit menopause till 70 years old. And when they do, they don't have menopausal symptoms. They just can't make babies anymore. They make less hormones, but the well-being is always there without taking hormones because they have the right balance of hormones. So it's our lifestyle choices that actually determine the balance of our hormones, our relationship experiences, and our lifestyle. And that makes all the difference in terms of health and well-being, and creates the possibility for generating a soulmate relationship, which I define a soulmate relationship as a relationship where you both provide the emotional support that allows you to fully express both your masculine and feminine sides. And that's our challenge today, is men learning how to provide the kind of support women need to express both their independence as well as their dependence, to express both their detachment as well as their emotional side, to express their problem-solving side as well as their nurturing side. These are examples of male and female sides. And what we want to do is to be able to balance both those things and have both. And the challenge I see again and again is so many women, 1 out of 4 women on antidepressants and sleeping pills. And what's happening is on the sleeping pills, stress levels are huge for women. Biologically, what we see in the tests, you can measure the stress hormone. And women are chronically under stress. Psychologically, they'll often say, I'm feeling overwhelmed. Okay, so when you're feeling overwhelmed, it's hard to relax, hard to enjoy being in your body, so to speak. So much to do, not enough time. That expression is an expression of elevated cortisol in her body. And that will only occur when her male hormones are greater than her female hormones. So to understand what she can do to come back to her female hormones is a new insight, new relationship skill that was actually never practiced on this planet before. Simply put, it would be sharing your vulnerable feelings with a man and having him understand. It just, women in indigenous societies never shared with men their vulnerability. They often didn't even know their vulnerability to articulate it. They didn't have the emotional intelligence to articulate. But it's only with that added emotional intelligence where women can learn to articulate their vulnerability in such a way that will double their estrogen levels, because in the testosterone stimulating world, where there's risk and danger, urgency, working for money, making decisions all the time, not feeling not enough time, risk, all that behavior, which is common for everybody, almost everyone today, it stimulates testosterone. And testosterone is a good thing for men. It actually lowers a man's cortisol levels. It raises a woman's cortisol levels, but it's estrogen, progesterone, prolactin, these oxytocin, these different hormones are what allows her body to find balance. And that's the whole key, is how to find that balance.
Well, and absolutely. And one of the things that I found really interesting when I was reading your new book, Beyond Mars and Venus, is that when you are engaging in, say, for example, women, when they're engaging in masculine activities, working, taking charge, even being a mom, you're really operating the family there, that you start to stimulate, as you were saying, more of the masculine testosterone hormone, just because you are engaging in that activity, which was really fascinating to me. I was not aware that that was all happening. So my question to you, John, would be, how then, what are some things we can do? Because you talk about helping people to balance their hormones, that hormones, you believe having a balance of hormones really creates a loving relationship. But if we're engaged in activities that swing us to the other side, for women, it's the testosterone, for men, it's the estrogen, getting into the feelings. What can they do to balance that, where they don't have to take medications for it or take supplements? I think you had several things outlined in your book that really do help, that are natural ways for the things they can engage in that would help them balance. Can you share some of those?
Absolutely. And you did mention without taking supplements. I personally believe that everybody can benefit from taking supplements. They don't have to take huge amount, but our diet is nutritionally deficient. Mineral supplements, certain ones, are essential to keep the stress levels down. But let me, before getting into actual practicalities, you have to understand the whole dynamic of what's going on. When you, because I'm over here saying that balancing hormones is going to make your relationship better. Well, it's love that makes your relationship better. Okay. It's learning how to communicate effectively love. It's communication skills. It's love. It's a balanced lifestyle. And that then will stimulate a hormonal balance. When you have hormonal balance on the biological level, your cortisol levels, that's a stress hormone, will be dramatically less. And when your cortisol levels are elevated, here's the crux of what I'm saying here. When your cortisol levels are elevated, blood flow will stop to the prefrontal cortex of the brain. Now, the prefrontal cortex of the brain is just right here. That's the executive part of the brain. It's the only part of our brain that has DNA, which is exclusively human. The middle part of our brain has DNA, which is exclusively monkey. And the back part of our brain has DNA, which is exclusively reptilian, basically like a dinosaur, a snake, a lizard, and alligator. So this is sort of the unconscious mind. This is sort of the subconscious mind. And this is the only part of us that can actually self-reflect and change our behavior and feel compassion and empathy, reinterpret things differently from the conditioning of our childhood. Basically, when we're experiencing elevated cortisol levels, blood flow stops to the part of the brain where we're capable of connecting to a point of view which is different from ours. In the monkey brain, if somebody agrees with you, sure, you feel love for them. But if somebody disagrees with them, it triggers all kinds of negative emotions and jealousies and attachments and control issues and insecurities. And we really go into behaving in ways that our parents did or their parents did. And that goes all the way back to thousands of years of evolution, which basically all go all the way back to monkeys. And as I observe couples over 40 years as a marriage counselor and my own marriage at times, when couples are arguing, they're no different. Their strategies are no different from monkeys. Is basically, simply put, if I disagree with you, I'm not going to connect with you until you agree with me. So I have to tell you what's wrong with your point of view. I have to complain that you don't understand my point of view. And, this I illustrated so clearly in Mars Venus, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, with one of my favorite chapters is something called The Anatomy of an Argument, which is typically what happens is a woman is not pleased by something. She's upset about something. She would like to communicate information to make her life better. And a man will hear that she's upset or bothered about something, and he will now explain to her why she doesn't need to be bothered or upset about that. So what you have is a man trying to change how a woman feels by telling her she's wrong. As if that's going to work. When has it ever worked? It just doesn't work unless the woman has extremely little self-esteem and says, oh, I'm so glad I have you to tell me how to feel. But women today are not willing to do that. And that's because they have to express both parts of them. And more women can express their independent self, the freedom it gives them to say, I'm going to stand up for my female side. I'm going to express my emotions, my vulnerability, my feelings. And their male side says, I want to create change in the outer world. I have a goal. I want to achieve it. And so it supports, she expresses that male part of her along with her female side. And it doesn't always work out. And what men will do is, we'll express our male side trying to solve the problem, explain to her why she shouldn't be upset. Then when she gets upset, we get upset, and then we argue back and forth. And as soon as you have a man mirroring back a woman's emotions, and that's what we have in this part of the brain is these mirror cells that become activated when we're under stress. We start mirroring that anger or upset that she has, and we get angry, and then she gets angry, and it's just big mess. And couples fall into that until some couples say we never argue and fight, but they do that as a way to avoid going there. But they suppress their feelings, and one typically will go into the more submissive role and let the other dominate so that you create the peace. And that's sort of been described as more traditional relationships. Women learned you just don't ask a man to change. You don't complain to a man. You don't ask him to change. You smile and you're happy, and you create a life separate from him with other women. And men do their job. If their job is if they are providers and they don't hurt you, you're quite grateful. I mean, this is a more primitive relationship, but it's really the theme of men did all kinds of jobs that women were glad that women didn't have to do. So women naturally had a lot of love for men. You know, if you don't want to go out hunting in a dangerous jungle or fight a war, and you've got a guy who says, I'll go do it for you, you feel so much love for him. So that's where the love would come from, is that women had a certain needs that they could not fulfill for themselves if they were pregnant or breastfeeding. And here comes a man who's willing to do that for her. It would generate massive love in her heart for him. And so she didn't ask for more. You know, basically, she never needed more from a man because she only picked the man who was willing to do those few things for her, which meant risk his life, provide for her, do the jobs that she did not want to do. And if you find a man like that, and we men want to do that because we want the woman's love. Women had tremendous love. But today, it's not as easy to love a man because you don't need a man to protect you or provide for you. You can do it yourself. So when you can do it for yourself, what do you need a man for? And so many single women, or women who've been in relationships where you didn't get what you need, you learn to be more independent. And so you don't feel this part of you, which is needing a man. What do I need a man for? So I think this is the first step, because any practice that I recommend will not work. No right phrase will work. No right behavior will work unless the psychology is such that first a woman feels, why do I need a man? Now, part of my techniques I'll suggest will help you access that part of you, but you have to know that's your goal. Is as a woman, if I'm feeling overwhelmed, I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do this. If I'm stressed, one way of understanding that is that the male hormones are being produced and your female hormones are not being produced enough or in the right balance. So even at different times of the month, you have to have certain female hormones. For example, women who are cycling still, if you're after ovulation for 12 days, if your progesterone is not higher than your estrogen, then you will be very unhappy during that time. You may even feel suicidal during that time. That's called estrogen dominance. I might have just said that wrong. Your progesterone needs to be higher than your estrogen. But if your estrogen is higher than your progesterone, because you're not making much progesterone, then you have something called estrogen dominance. Estrogen on the other side of your cycle is really, really good. Estrogen on the after ovulation is not so good, but you still need it. You need to have a balance of estrogen and progesterone. And when you have too much estrogen because you're not making progesterone, it causes all kinds of stress in your body and unhappiness, painful symptoms in your body, bloating of breasts or soreness of breasts and period problems when your period comes. Often suicidal thoughts will occur. Anger, we often call that PMS, premenstrual syndrome, is simply the female hormones being out of balance. And one of the easiest ways to explain that today is why does it occur? Is that you're not making enough progesterone. Progesterone is produced through social activities with other equals, not a intimate relationship with a man, for example. Intimate relationship with a man will produce estrogen. Intimate relationship with a man, if you're looking solely to your partner for your happiness during the 12 days after your ovulation, or on the other side of the full moon, the waning moon, if you're looking to a man as a primary source of fulfillment, you will always be dissatisfied, frustrated. That's a time when you have to make a shift and you have to go, okay, it was really good a few weeks ago having this man in my life, but now I need to shift to not depending on a man for my happiness. I look to my social behaviors or to my me time, which is time to support myself. And any thoughts of he's not doing good enough or I need a man or whatever should be understood to be expressions of imbalance, and then ways to come back to knowing, okay, now I need to go shopping. Now I need to have a dinner party. Now I need to go walk with a girlfriend. Now I need to spend some time in a bathtub and read a book. And I need to do things for myself. This is the time when you need to make the progesterone. Now, at the other part of the month, that's making progesterone doesn't help at all. So this is all new education for women. And you kind of go, why didn't we figure this out before? Why was this not known before? And part of it, I have to thank all of the drug companies for figuring out women's hormonal needs so they could give them hormones. But unfortunately, when somebody gives you hormones, you're not making them yourself, so you don't have the right motivations. Some of the sad truths are such that when women are taking estrogen, or the environmental estrogens in our meat go into your body, or the chemicals, the GMOs, those basic chemicals, which are also in a lot of beauty products. These chemicals, when they get into the body, they bind with estrogen receptor sites. And when they bind with estrogen receptor sites, they send a message to the brain that you've gotten what you need, and now it's time to give back. So you see, women have this huge urge to give and give and give because their body thinks it's making estrogen when it's not making any at all. It's just a really sad situation of this pressure on women to give and give and give, and then feeling empty, empty, empty. And this is actually part of a chemical reaction that's going on in her body where she doesn't feel her need for love and affection. It's like being able to feel the need for a man, a need for intimate relationship. To feel that need, you need estrogen. But if you don't have enough estrogen, then it will feel like whatever a man does for you is not enough. So it all gets very confused. We're throwing estrogens into the body, and at the same time, we're doing a job that stimulates testosterone that lowers our estrogen. It's important for women to get that estrogen is like this important hormone that for 5 days after your period, it's not so important, but then shifts and has to double. That's when you need the man the most. That's during this 5-day window where that's where you want a little romance in your life. That's where you make sure to open up and be vulnerable with a man if you can find one. If you can't, there are other ways of doing this. It's called pair bonding, where you're depending on somebody for help. It's just that an intimate relationship with a man, a romantic relationship with a man particularly, can double your estrogen quite easily. But if you don't, you go to a doctor, counselor, chiropractor, somebody that you feel you depend upon for your well-being and happiness, for your health. If you're sick, you're going to get a lot of pair bonding when you go visit your doctor. But when you need that the most is during those 5 days, which will make your estrogen shoot up. But you need the stimulation that will make the estrogen go up. You don't need signals saying, oh, I already have plenty of estrogen, then your body doesn't make it. And it's these motivations that the hormones motivate us. So often women are not motivated, are unable to fall in love with a man. I'm thinking of one woman who basically, she's very independent and very self-sufficient, and she dates men. She says, they're just never good enough. They're just not good enough. I don't click. I don't fall in love. Why am I not falling in love? You can't fall in love if you're a woman unless you feel enough vulnerability to, I need love. And this sense of independence, it's really hard to feel that you need a man. So this is why I have to create this framework of why do you need a man in your life, so that when you have a man, you delight and truly delight in him, at least beginning to, by becoming more and more vulnerable. And how is that done? It's very confusing for women, particularly women who are independent. They just can't access that part of them because their independence generates testosterone, and testosterone suppresses estrogen. So it's a gradual process of lessening your testosterone and coming over and opening up to your more feminine feelings. And they're identifying my female side, but you first have to really clearly see, that's why I'm unhappy today. And I need a man. What do I need a man for if I already have a greater sense of independence? And the answer to that, Maslow actually gave us the answer to that, famous psychologist, most people have heard of him, because he discovered a concept of hierarchy of needs. And that when your needs are for survival and security, if somebody provides survival and security, you're going to be very fulfilled and happy because that's your primary need. But when you're able to provide for your own survival and security, and when civilization does that to a great extent, a shift will take place and those needs become secondary. You don't kind of go, well, I don't need a man for that. Well, what do you need a man for? Boom, you need a man to support you on an emotional level, to fulfill your emotional needs for intimacy and your needs for self-expression. And that's what I define as a soulmate relationship. It's a relationship where you have a partner, if we're looking at the woman in the partnership, a partner that supports her in both the freedom to be her independent self, but also the opportunity for her to go and experience greater intimacy than ever before in history. See, this intimacy need is not known before. What does it mean to be intimate? How does it, we have a lot of unrealistic expectations. Certainly, if you can, intimacy is intimacy. Okay, so see into me. Intimacy, and that, by the way, is female intimacy. We men also have a greater need for intimacy, but it's not really to see into me. It's to appreciate what I do for you at a higher level, meaning to delight and appreciate and trust and accept a man fully as he attempts to provide for you the kind of support you need to experience intimacy, not to ask him what he's feeling and going into him. It's actually a learning process of how to share what's inside of you with a man where he can listen and make it safe for you to begin experiencing layers of who you are on a vulnerable level that you've never shared with anybody, or you certainly have not shared with a man. And many women are even unaware of these layers, but they're layers of insecurity often, and there's layers of feelings of anger, there's layers of feeling hurt, there's layers of feeling disappointed. But your male side, which is very strong, says there's nothing you can do about it. Just suppress it. Don't worry about it. Forget it. No big deal. You can handle it yourself. And it will actually say that's irrational and don't go there. Because see, that's what we men do. And we have to do that if we're going to stay men. There's nothing psychologically off if a man is we might call it not really suppressing feelings, but processing them by dismissing them. There's actually a form of therapy called rational emotive therapy, where you look at your emotions and see that they're all irrational. But for the female to connect with that, before she looks at what's irrational inside, she first has to feel it. And that's tricky when you're this. I remember one woman said, well, I can't share those feelings that, I'm a smart, strong woman. And I go, listen, if you're a woman and you're not happy and you're not fulfilled, you've got a lot of irrational emotions inside that need to be shared and heard. And I speak with 100% confidence here, because as a marriage counselor, as a therapist for, over 30 years, over and over and over, women will come into my office, tell me about some of the woes in their life. I explore their emotions with them to a deeper level that they weren't even aware of. And then they realize that they don't have that much to be unhappy about, and they leave happy. Okay, so that's what an irrational emotion is that, I'm angry with you, and then I realize, oh, there's no real reason to be angry, so I let go of my anger. And what would the real reason be to ever let go of anger? Anger is the expectation that you should be different and you should be perfect. And if you love me, you would do it this way. And the rational perspective is, somebody can love me and also be not perfect and also do the wrong thing. And he certainly didn't wake up today with the intention of upsetting me. But it takes a while for her to get back to her rational side. And some women, because they are so rational, that's the testosterone side of all of us, they're so rational, they can't even feel that irrational emotional side. But that's what emotions are. They're emotional reactions which are based upon conditioning of the past instead of knowledge in the present time. And so we are all so affected by our conditioning in the past. I mean, for me, for example, one of the easiest things in the world for me is to do an interview like this, or to stand in front of an audience. Give me 10,000 people, I'm totally relaxed. Give me 20 people, I'm totally relaxed. Give me one person, I'm totally relaxed. Well, go back 30 years in my life, I stood in front of an audience of 30 people. I was so nervous and anxious that my knees shook and I fainted and fell on the floor. People thought I died. And I was 19 years old and giving a talk on develop your full mental potential. They thought he died so young. Life is amazing in that we all have challenges before we can find our authentic self and fully express it. And we all want that. We're all motivated for that. But to get there means we have to sort of uncover all kinds of layers of conditioning and let go of that conditioning, to where we can then emerge as an authentic person, being able to reflect on everything we think and say and do, and correct it and bring it into present time. And that takes time to do. It's a lifetime journey of growing in love together. When you're in a relationship, your partner will always push your buttons and on both sides until we get to where we can love all the time. And loving all the time, as I do with my wife, for example, is meaning that understanding women, and women need to understand themselves, is that the way life is women are particularly like the weather. That's how estrogen is. It's always changing. It's going up and it's going down, and progesterone's going up and oxytocin goes up and down. It's all around the place. It's like women are 5 different people, and even more so. When you're with your children, different hormones get produced. When you're in the office, different hormones get produced. When you're making love, different hormones get produced. When you're being independent on your own, in your me time, different hormones get produced. And these hormones are who you are. Now, for men, it's very different. We're like either testosterone's up or down. That's pretty much it, unless we're way out of balance. I'm just talking about a balanced woman. A healthy woman is going to be going through all kinds of feelings. And I describe it to men, and it's helpful for women to see themselves this way as well, which is you are the weather. You are Mother Earth. You're like the weather. The weather's always changing. And it's perfectly natural and normal for the be sunny, beautiful days, blue skies, white puffy clouds. Like today, I'm in California. I'm looking out and seeing that. Then the rains will come. The clouds will cloud over, and the sun is still there. The love is still there, but it's blocked. And that's what stress does. And we all are stressed today in different ways. And since women will rise up, feel good, and then boom, they'll start noticing all the problems in their life. The stress levels will go up. She needs to know how to use a man at those times to fulfill her needs, to rebalance her hormones, to support her hormones and being in balance. And a man can provide that extra support to do it if you have the communication insights. But as I said, we haven't gone into those. I know you're wanting me to say those, but nothing works unless you really get that you need a man and why you need a man. And so the 3 simple ways of understanding why you need a man, not all the time either, particularly during those 5 days. And then the other times somewhat. But it's that you need a man for romance. You need a man to share your irrational, vulnerable, needy self, a part of you that you hide from the world because you're afraid deep inside that if they saw it, they would reject you. They would see you as weak. They would see you as inadequate. They would be turned off to you. And part of that is a very practical reality in that when you are needy, you can turn a man off very easily. And you're also afraid of being in touch with your needs, because when men are needy, it is such a turnoff to women. It is so horrendously a bigger turnoff. A man is actually turned on when a woman feels her need for him, not needy, her need for him. Now, what would feeling your need for your partner to look like? It would be happy to see him when he approaches you. It's like, food has arrived. I've got what I need. And needy is, hey, you're supposed to be here an hour ago. Why weren't you here when I needed you? That's needy. Needy is always saying you're not fulfilling my needs. And needing is rejoicing in that I have you in my life and I can depend on you in my life. And I recognize that you're not a perfect person and you're not everything to me. That's a big lie, is that one person can fulfill all our big needs. It just doesn't happen that way. I remember, as an example of that, as a teacher, when I married Bonnie, I was used to audiences clapping for me and being happy for me and standing ovations sometimes. That's just a thrill for a teacher. And I'd come home and my wife was not always happy to see me. She'd say, you forgot to call me, or you're late, or, you forgot to bring the trash out, had to do it on Tuesday night while you're out of town. I'd be hit with complaints. And I'm like, what? I'm worth a standing ovation. I'm a great guy. I'm a great provider, a great husband. And, she said to me one time, brilliant woman, she said, John, I love you so much, but I can't give you everything you need. And I can't give you the standing ovations you're used to. I'm just me. I provide other things. And I realized, prior to that insight, I was like all upset because I'm thinking, gee, here all these strangers can appreciate me. Why can't she appreciate me like that? And then I realized she appreciates me in another way. She shows her love in another way. And so we have different places in our life to get our emotional needs met. An intimate relationship is where we can share things that we don't share with anybody else. But the problem is that when women have lots of stress during their day, there's all kinds of these little thoughts and feelings and reactions that you can't reveal. You have to put on the mask. You have to put on the mask. I'm happy to serve you. I'm happy with my job. I'm not going to complain. but I certainly don't like this person, and this person's being selfish, and I'm not getting recognition I deserve, and I don't feel appreciated for what I do. I'm working hard. All these little grumblings and rumblings inside. And we know from Freudian psychology that when you suppress all those rumblings, then they will come out. They'll build up and build up and build up. It's like the emotional intensity of that increases each as it builds and it builds and it builds. And if it doesn't have an outlet, and it doesn't in the workplace, you cannot just go around sharing all the feelings and thoughts you have about people. Then what happens is, if you're in a sexual relationship, those suppressed feelings, the intensity of that dissatisfaction gets projected onto or displaced onto the person you're having sex with. And suddenly you experience all that dissatisfaction with them, and you feel an urgency to share yourself with them, and often then a resentment that they won't hear you. And that's what goes on in marriage, is the dissatisfaction, will be projected onto the person you love the most. Now, the same thing could happen to me as a man. If I'm suppressing my feelings of the day, I could unload that onto my wife. But the difference is that under moderate stress, women have 8 times more blood flow to the emotional part of the brain than a man does. So I can be under a lot of stress and I'm not really suppressing anything, because I'm not really having much emotional reaction to suppress. One of the functions of testosterone in our body is, if you're in danger and you're alone, whether you're a man or woman, so you're on your own, you're independent, you're in danger, your testosterone levels will rise. And as testosterone levels are rising, it gives you faster reaction time. It causes you to have more energy to the cells. It gives you more motivation to react fast. And so the testosterone, motivation, energy also gives you more energy. That is increasing to solve the problem. And in order to do that, estrogen levels go down as testosterone goes up, and that causes detachment. So when a man is feeling challenged, his first reaction is detachment. When a woman is feeling challenged, her first reaction is estrogen rises and she feels attachment. She begins to look at, where's the support that I have in my life? Her emotions create a sense of intuition of looking to where I can get support. The male side of us goes to, what do I have to do to solve this problem? So when women go to their testosterone side, they actually suppress that first emotional reaction that's measurable in every woman's brain, is this 8 times increased blood flow. Then what happens, just to understand the differences between men and women, is if a man has his testosterone go up, he becomes detached, centered. How can I solve this problem? Analytical. He's thinking about it. Then if he doesn't have an answer and he feels threatened, his testosterone turns into estrogen and he becomes emotional. And that's where men misbehave, is whenever they become emotional. That's where men's stress levels start to rise, is when they're feeling challenged. They don't know what to do. An enzyme called aromatase gets produced in his belly, which then converts his testosterone to estrogen, and he becomes angry, or he becomes defensive, or he becomes moody and depressed. He becomes irritable. All of those symptoms are when a man's estrogen levels are too high and his testosterone levels are dropping, which is ironic because most people have completely misunderstood testosterone. Up until this point, around 2000, they discovered in the studies at Stanford University that it's whenever men are aggressive, it's their testosterone levels are turning into estrogen, flooding their brain with emotion. Otherwise, they behave very wonderfully. And so testosterone is your friend, women, and learning how to stimulate testosterone in a man is how to get more from a man. As a man, learning how to provide the safety for women to express themselves, particularly their emotions and feelings, thoughts, desires, wishes, and wants. The safety to express herself, to be authentic in expression, is the primary source of increasing estrogen. When she needs that estrogen the most, he can provide that safety for her. But men don't understand this. What men do is they feel women will start to want to open up and share. And if she actually becomes vulnerable, many of the emotions she has will be temporary. They'll be irrational. And that's appropriate. It's just there's a little rain cloud over the sun right now, and it will rain and the sun will come right back out. But men don't know that. The model I give for men to understand women, besides being like the weather, is that women are often like waves, and that they'll see the positive and positive, But to the extent they see the positive, they might be suppressing the negative inside of them. Then the wave will go down. That's when she becomes aware of her frustrations, her disappointments, her judgments, her criticisms, her dissatisfaction. It just sort of shows up. And if she can express that part of her, her estrogen will go back up and the wave comes back up. So I teach men, go with the wave, ride the wave. And women have to ride the wave as well. They can't expect themselves to feel positive and loving all the time. What you want to do is when those feelings are coming up, be able to journal them, share them with a girlfriend who will understand a little bit easier than a guy. Then you step into the arena of relationship where you use this tool and you would ask, what can we do to help bring women back to their female side? There's no more powerful way to do it than sharing emotions. Sharing emotions. And why would that be? Because sharing emotions is the number one thing that keeps women from being authentic, is that their emotions, when they're irrational, do not make them more successful in the workplace. If you were to share your emotional reactions, it would just sound like a complaining woman, weak complaining woman, and that's certainly not going to get you ahead. And that certainly isn't all of who you are, but it is a part of you. But ironically, it's not even complaining. And I want to make this point because this is like one of these really important things to discern the difference between sharing emotions and complaining. So if I was having dinner with you and you didn't like the soup, you'd say, oh, John, my soup's too cold. Is yours too cold? I'd say, no, yeah, mine's too cold too. I can't believe that they have such cold soup in a fancy restaurant like this. You know, they must have had it sitting out for a while. And we'd have a whole conversation about the soup and we'd feel connected because we're sharing our experiences together and our feelings about something. That is sharing. Then I say, well, waiter, come over here. Our soup is too cold. You know, I'd like to talk to the manager about this or something. You should have better soup. I've just shared my experience, but now I'm sharing it to someone with a to-do. I want you to fix it. I want you to solve this problem. I expect that you'll give me a free dessert or a free drink or something because you've inconvenienced me besides giving me my soup, a hotter soup. So that's called complaining, is when you share your negative emotion in the context of trying to motivate someone to change.
Right.
That is what monkeys do. I'll just say it again. To share your negative emotions in the context of trying to get someone to change is what monkeys do. Blood flow is not going to the front part of your brain. Sharing your emotions in order to connect, in order to find validation, in order to experience intimacy, in order to experience understanding, in order to feel a level of compassion from someone, empathy from someone, in order to validate where you're coming from. These are legitimate needs of sharing. But when you do that sharing from the perspective of trying to motivate someone to change their behavior, like, you've hurt me and I'm telling you that so that you'll not hurt me. I want to hear an apology. I want a change in behavior. And if I don't see a change in behavior, then I won't be able to trust you ever again. Okay, so this is manipulation, using emotions to manipulate, using emotions to motivate people to change. And there's nothing wrong with using positive emotions to motivate. That's okay. But when you use negative emotions to motivate change, what happens is you're no longer connected with your love for someone. You're just loving yourself. You're looking to yourself. You have to, love is a sharing of love for both people. Both sides win. And so it's hard to share your feelings, particularly if they're all about what somebody did to you. You want to share with them about what they did and how it made you feel, and they're just going to feel defensive. That's all there is to it. Complaining always pushes buttons.
Yeah. How do you do that then, John? Because I know in my experience, I have a lot of clients who have had challenges in their relationships and they are experiencing trust issues and they're very hurt. And so they're real. It's real. In the land of facts, there's some real things going on there. But as you say, you want to create connection, because if you come from that place of you did this to me, it's just going to put the man on the defensive. So what do you suggest as a really empowering way to create that conversation so that you can evolve rather than polarize?
Well, you probably have had the experience that women have shared with you their experience with men, and they ended up feeling better in the session, correct?
No, they're frustrated. you
What
know?
you mean when they after they leave a session with you more frustrated, or they leave feeling better?
No, they leave feeling better, but
Why?
they're
Why?
frustrated. Why? Well, because we worked through what was really happening for them.
Yeah. Okay. They felt heard. They felt seen. They felt understood.
Yeah.
So let's just dissect that. This is my experience as a therapist. I have many clients, and she comes in and she's stressed out, and I get her to explore and express what's going on. We always go a little deeper in terms of her emotions and feelings and her understanding. So as we go deeper into what she's experiencing, what actually is happening in her body is her estrogen levels are going up. Her cortisol levels are now going down.
Mm,
Now blood flow is not flooding her emotional part of the brain, but now it can move to the front part of the brain where she's able to live in present time. And when you're in present time, you're right here now, you're basically, your well-being dramatically increases.
mm,
So well-being is what we're looking for. Happiness is what we're looking for. Now, every woman who leaves my office, generally speaking, is much, much happier, much more stress-free, because happiness is our natural state. Love is our natural state. Our little monkey brain gets in the way of that. We can't find that natural state, because that's the human natural state right up here. We're able to reflect on ourselves and know the truth, which is nobody's perfect, and you're not perfect. I'm not perfect. And if I want love to grow, I have to learn to understand more, love more, accept more, be patient more, and all those kinds of things.
mm,
So, you talk about what you just referred to in the conversation is, what can she say to him? My answer is that when you're stressed, you don't talk to the person you're stressed by, period. It has never worked. Will it ever work? No. So you're asking, what can she say to him about that? Nothing. But what she can do is go through a 4-step procedure to get what she wants. So that's right in the introduction of the new book. And then the rest of the book helps to fulfill how do you do that. But to share your hurt. See, there's this idea that if somebody's betrayed you and hurt you and mistreated you and whatever, whether it be a man or a woman, it doesn't matter. The idea that I have to tell them about this before I can feel better. No, you don't have to tell them about that before you can feel better. We have a fantasy that there's going to be this perfect person who can hear feeling judged, attacked, and criticized. Nobody can hear being judged and attacked and criticized. You just can't without getting defensive.
yeah.
It's just no woman can hear it. If I was to, start telling my wife how much she hurts me and hurts me and hurts me, she can't hear another word. And I saw that, 20 years ago or something. I remember back in those days, actually not 20 years ago, 30 years ago, in psychology, I didn't understand the difference between men and women. So women were all saying, I want him to tell me how he feels. I want to hear his feelings. And so I said, he's in his head. What are his feelings? So I told the man, I just said, okay, we're going to explore your feelings. And then you want me to share your feelings with your partner. And she's like all excited about it. And I taught him the I feel hurt phrase, be vulnerable. Within a month, all the women I taught that to their husbands, they came back and they wanted divorces. I mean, they were really unhappy. One woman said, when I married him, I didn't realize he had so many problems. He's just, everything I do and say hurts his feelings. Anytime a woman complains or wants more or is not happy with what I've done, if I'm in my female side, it hurts my feelings. I don't have my male side, which is able to analyze and always hold on to the calm centeredness, which says that, hey, she's not happy. That doesn't mean I failed her. She's not happy. She's a normal woman. Nobody's going to be happy all the time. She should be able to communicate with me. But these men, they started going to their female side. And they're saying, I feel hurt when you say that. Or I feel hurt when you criticize me. I feel hurt when you want more from me. Which, by the way, my wife would feel hurt if I criticized and wanted more from her. I give her unconditional love. That's why we have a relationship that works. I teach men, don't ever complain to a woman. Why would you complain? You're not going to get what you want. You're going to get a resentful woman who does what you want and then resents that you're not doing everything she wants. So it's a dance. And so you have to understand the male side of it and the female side of it, which is women really need this freedom to express how they feel and think, because that increases their estrogen. When men start expressing everything they feel and think in the negative sense, their estrogen shoots up. So another woman said, ever since he started using the I feel hurt phrase, I have to walk on eggshells. I don't want to protect him from me. I want him to protect me. Another woman said, ever since he's been sharing his vulnerable feelings and crying and sharing his hurt and sadness, I feel like I'm with a little boy and I can't be turned on to a child. I want a man. So, women didn't understand the monster they're creating. What they were wanting is someone that would make them feel safe. And they had the illusion that if he was more like a woman, then she would feel safe. But then you don't have your husband there. You've got a girlfriend who you like to share with, but you don't want to be married to.
Right.
You need time apart.
Right.
So it's a very, very confusing thing, as I mentioned in the preference here to the whole day, is that we're encountering a whole new terrain when it comes to relationships. And without a full understanding, some of my ideas seem to be extremely counterproductive against everything we've learned in psychology. But so much of what we've learned in psychology is about what helps women, not what helps men. Rarely, there are some books that address this somewhat of what it means to be a man, but also to respect and be compassionate and empathetic and sensitive to what a woman's needs are. Women wanted a man to be sensitive. No, you don't want a sensitive guy. You want a guy who's tough, who can detach, who can achieve his goals, who has ambitions, who's independent, who is also considerate, compassionate, empathetic, sensitive to her sensitivities. That's what you want. You want validation, but you'll never get the validation from a guy by having him becoming more feminine. It's actually he becomes more masculine. Is that a masculine man can listen. When the act of listening, when I am hearing what you say, I am penetrating into you. You're not going into me. I'm penetrating into you. I'm the male energy, the penetrating energy, and also the serving energy, the wanting to please energy. That's masculine. And what she's doing is sharing herself, allowing somebody to enter into her world and see the world through her eyes. And she puts her heart out there like this, and how he reacts to that has a huge impact on her. And when he doesn't know how to treat her in that sensitive way, and he thinks he's doing the best he can, he thinks he's telling you, don't worry about it, it's not a big deal, hey, you're just being irrational, you're too needy, just don't think about yourself so much. These are ideas that would work for him if a friend told him that. It doesn't work for her. It's literally like putting a knife into her heart where she has no defenses, and then she closes up. But why does he want to change what she's feeling? Because a man wants to make you happy, and he thinks that your thinking process, this irrational emotions that you're sharing and your perspective on this situation is just wrong. And if you would change it to the way I look at the world, you'd be so much happier. That's the monkey brain. It's trying to make everybody think the way you think rather than understanding differences in a positive way. That is only possible through the prefrontal cortex of the brain. And if our hormones are out of balance, then we cannot reach that part of the brain. It's a biological reality that there has to be a certain amount of correct balance for that particular person at that time of the month in order for the brain to work from this human side of the brain. Now, simply put, when a woman feels safe, she can always find that hormonal balance, unless she's been conditioned to do behaviors that really are not productive for her. For example, so many women today, when they're children, they see their mother limited in her freedom to express herself, and often a weakness, a powerlessness, maybe a subduing to abuse in various ways, or feeling, unhappy. And so you see that and you go, I do not want some man ruling my life. I do not want to be told how I can be. I do not want to limit myself. I don't want to be in that vulnerable place where I'm dependent on somebody else. I want to be independent. That's evolution. That's great. But in being independent, what happens, as I mentioned before, there's a tendency to disconnect with a very beautiful part of every woman, which needs support and which is able to appreciate support, which is able to experience love, which is able to experience patience, which is able to experience a vulnerability that doesn't fit what everybody says you should be, but a vulnerability that says this is who I am, and not ashamed of who I am. All of this is all like deep stuff, and it takes years to really fully develop this. The good news, it just takes, within days, you can make a shift that with just a new understanding and movement towards that perfect balance of who we are to express authentically ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
I hesitate to ever say perfect, but it's you get moments of perfect balance and then you fall out of balance. It's kind of like walking on a tightrope. Here's your male side is the left, and the right side your female side. So you're walking this tightrope, And even a master is always going to be jiggling a little bit. You're always going to go too far this way, a little bit too far that way. But knowing the symptoms of where you're out of balance is the first step. And then the second step is to know how the right direction to go in. So if I'm swinging too far to my male side, let's say I'm a woman, I'm swinging too far to my male side, I need to stop. And now I need to go towards my female side. So what would help me go to my female side? And then I have to stop and go back to my male side, because you can go too far to your female side. That creates hysteria, that creates powerlessness, that creates anxiety, is too far to your female side. And too far to your male side is a sense of dissatisfaction and overwhelm and inability to fall in love and embrace a man's imperfections. And if you're heterosexual, if you're not, then it would be to embrace your partners the way they are and not expect more than they can provide. And all of that is very confusing, because another element comes in, which is biochemistry, which is in the beginning of any relationship, we're all on kind of a drug trip. We're not looking at reality. You can't see reality when you're in a new sexual relationship. You're always in a bit of a fantasy world, because your brain is producing higher levels of dopamine, which alters your vision, your motivation, your capacity to love. In a sense, it gives you a heightened capacity to love more than you will realistically have. But it gives you a glimpse of what you can have. And I can say that quite honestly, being with Bonnie for over 40 years, being madly in love with her in the beginning, and then going through all kinds of ups and downs and hurt feelings and arguments and fights, that we learn to get through all that with love, and not argue and fight, but to create space and understanding and empathy and lack of emphasis on perfection. That's a life's journey here of being married for 32 years, where I'm at a place now where at least, you know, when we're in bed together and making love, it's, in my experience and in hers, it's better than it was in the beginning. And that is because my wife said to me one time, that was about 10 years ago, she said this, and actually it was in the seventh year of our marriage, I was comparing the great sex then. I said, wow, this is better than the beginning. And I was saying, this is as good as it was in the beginning. And she said, oh, it was better. And I went, what do you mean? She says, well, now you've seen the best of me, and you've seen the worst of me, and you still love me and adore me. That's what makes sex great, is the love. And the love grows over time, not by having a perfect partner, but by making them the perfect partner, by making them the one. As you grow, there is no one who has all perfect attributes. It's the challenges in a marriage, the sacrifices you make, the moments that you come through your own resistance to love and find forgiveness. That's what makes you a loving person. It's easy to love a stranger who stimulates you and creates this newness of dopamine. And so you have sort of a blind vision. You don't see negativity, but then boom, at a certain point, you're off that drug trip and you're back to seeing a real person who has positive qualities, negative qualities, not everything you want, but you learn to make them that person. And that's your gift of love to them. And it's a journey of doing that. And it's finding the forgiveness. You talked about establishing trust. It's a big, big thing for women. I want to just to create a context for this. It's not that big of a thing for men. For a man, he tries his very best to make a woman happy. And when she's not happy, he gives up. He stops caring. So for men, that's their vulnerable place, is they just stop caring. And for me, 1,000 times, I would go to my cave and I say, I'm done. I can't take this. And then I would work with my own inner world to find responsibility and accountability and care again. Something my wife said about me, I think this was 23 years into the marriage. I remember the time, it was a big changing point where she was saying, you know, I asked her how she rates me as a husband. And she said, you're a perfect father. You're the best father for our children I could imagine. As a husband, you're not perfect, but you've given me the greatest gift a woman could ever want. I said, what's that? She said, I know that I can upset you. I know that I express myself. Sometimes you feel blamed, criticized, and you shut down. And I know I can hurt you. And I don't mean to, but I know it happens. And each time over the last 23 years, you will go to your cave and you will do some kind of magic, and you will come out of that cave with more love than before. So
Hmm.
I know no matter what I say or do, you'll never leave me. I can be myself. And that gave me an insight that I teach all men now, and women need to be aware of it too, to be able to communicate to men what is most important to you as a woman is safety. And if you say to a man, I just need to feel safe, he doesn't know what you mean. Well, I'm not going to beat you up. No, it's the safety to express yourself, knowing that if a man can't hear you and starts to feel angry, that he will stop talking, and that it is a gift to you as well as to himself to not talk more, but to take quiet time and do what he needs to do to open his heart again, and to not talk when he's angry. Now that's so very, very important. That's a new concept because, we know all these old-fashioned ideas like never go to bed angry, always talk it out and so forth. No, not when you're looking for a soulmate relationship, not when you're dealing with a man who has a very strong feminine side as well as a masculine side. He's gotten too far to his female side. We now know that when a man is angry, his testosterone is turning into estrogen. If he's angry, blood flow is stopped to the front part of his brain. The only part of his brain that's active is his monkey brain or his lizard brain. There's nothing he can do to make it better. And every time he talks to the person he's upset about, when he's angry, his emotions, the estrogen that's fueling his emotions only increases. You see, I have a whole varied background. I was a Hindu monk for 9 years. I was in India and Switzerland and mastering meditation. If you study all these ancient arts of Buddhism and Hinduism and meditation and shamanism in South America, what you'll see is that men, not women, were taught to meditate. We're taught practices to go out on your own. And in the American Indians as well, you go on a vision quest on your own, independent, silent. And that's what allows men to rebuild their testosterone is silence and independence and self-reliance. And you can add to that an intellectual analysis, problem solving, competence, confidence. All these things are I outline them in the book, so a long list. But this is what stimulates testosterone. Anytime a man is getting defensive or arguing, he from his side needs to stop and take time to rebuild his testosterone, because biologically he's literally like falling off a cliff. You can't just reverse. Your estrogen goes up and you're talking. And now women have to understand those times when a man is getting angry or defensive, if he has not taken my trainings and doesn't know what it takes to have a relationship, she, on the other hand, has to understand that when she continues to ask him questions and listen to what he has to say when he's angry, defensive, or argumentative, he will only become more angry, defensive, and argumentative. The only way out at that point is to submit, which is what women did in the past, and just agree with him. If you agree with him, his testosterone will go back up, he'll calm down. But what if you don't agree with him? And you don't feel hurt on your own side. What you're doing there is you're going too far to your female side, which is just becoming submissive, which you don't want to be. You want to be yielding. Both partners want to be yielding. We want to find a place of negotiation, of collaboration, of compromise, but not just submission. And this is where women would become, way out of balance. Too much estrogen is when they just become submissive in order to avoid a man becoming angry. Because the truth of the matter is that, and historically speaking, when men get angry, people die. And so when I'm angry, on a biological, chemical condition level, my wife's monkey brain, literally her fight or flight will dramatically increase because she could die. Even though in reality, of course, I would never do that. But this part of the brain is all irrational. It's all conditioned. It's living 1,000 years ago right now. And when men in history got angry, people died. And even today, sometimes that happens. Sometimes now women get angry, people die, but that's because they're on their male side. But the reality is when a woman is angry, it doesn't threaten a man as much. He doesn't necessarily have to automatically go into fight or flight. I don't anymore at all. My wife can be upset with me for being too late or, not remembering to do something or languaging something wrong by making somebody else appear more important than her, like in a conversation, talking to somebody else instead of her. She'll get angry with me. She feels angry, and she's not a perfect person. She's not always feeling love. And by the way, you can't feel connection when you're angry. Connection flows when you have positive emotion, and the positive emotion's love. it's happiness, it's joy. And yet, we can say that's our North Star. That's what we're always shooting for. That's when we're in balance. But nobody's going to be in balance all the time. Even a jet plane flying from Los Angeles to New York, it will leave. It can leave on time. It can arrive exactly on time. And yet never on that whole journey was it ever straight on track. It was always going too far to the right, too far to the left, too far to the right, compensating for the wind and the turbulence and all these things. We should never expect perfection, but we can still achieve our goals. And I think today our goals are changing in relationship, as I mentioned before, which is to be authentic. And what is the support to find that authenticity? It's for women to dig deeper into their femininity, and for men to dig deeper into their masculinity, to be true heroes. And what that looks like for men is to not get defensive and to truly be there for her at her difficult times. And that's hard for men. And if both men and women understand whose job is what, it can make it easier. When a man divorces a woman, it's usually says the same thing to me. He says, or wants to divorce. He'll say, no matter what I do, it's not enough to make her happy, not enough to make her happy. And so he stops caring. From her side, she'll be giving and giving and giving, and she doesn't get back what she needs, and therefore she stops trusting. And so trust is a challenge for women to overcome primarily within themselves, and caring is a thing that a man has to overcome primarily within himself, and not be waiting for your partner to change to overcome those things. And you overcome those things. The trust issue for women is to continue to explore the depths of their feelings and experience a higher level of safety in sharing how they feel. It's interesting, when you talk about, a good intellectual understanding, wisdom is very important for women to let go of trust. For men, it's compassion that allows them to care again. And when a woman can be vulnerable and love him, it allows him to care again. When a woman can go inside of her vulnerability and discover deeper levels of who she is through intuition, she's able to find her wisdom. And it's wisdom that actually allows her to trust again. And in a situation, let's take an example of having an affair, a big thing when you talk about trust issues. A man might have an affair. Now, the recent research, let's just be clear about this, it's women are just as vulnerable having affairs as men now. They say it's 50-50. Because women have more opportunity to have affairs. And generally when you're having an affair, it's because you're not getting what you want at home. That's generally the situation. And people want to feel alive, and sex makes you feel alive. And if you've deadened yourself in your relationship and you don't have that polarity, the connection and so forth, you go out and have an affair, and then you get caught and your partner feels hurt, or you tell your partner and I can't get what I need from you, so I'm going somewhere else. Well, whatever. There's a feeling of, I thought we were madly in love and we could give each other everything we needed. And the truth is that's unrealistic, but you can maintain a monogamous relationship if you have a great sex life. And it's very hard to have a great sex life if both partners are not growing in love together, and you kind of deaden it. What happens is in the beginning of a relationship, the newness and the risk associated with opening yourself up stimulates a massive amount of dopamine, and that's a drug. It's like taking heroin, and that opens your heart. You go, everything's fantastic. This is great. And you have great sex life. Testosterone levels go up, estrogen levels skyrocket if you're a woman in the high dopamine stage. And then familiarity sets in, comfort sets in, serotonin gets produced because the comfort is there. The dopamine goes down because there's no newness. And we base our relationships on the newness and the sexual attractions. It's all very thrilling in the beginning, but there's other things that can stimulate dopamine as well. And that is vulnerability. When a woman opens herself to need a man, that also stimulates high levels of dopamine, because you're in a place of risk and danger when you share something that you don't share with anybody else, because they might ridicule, they might judge, they may not care. So each time you open up as a woman, you share your vulnerability and you feel, I need him. Or when you're happy because you have what you need from him. Happiness is also an expression of vulnerability, not just tears and fear, but happiness and joy means that, I'm letting you affect me. That's vulnerability. So as women grow in vulnerability in a relationship, it keeps their dopamine up, that keeps the passion alive. And as men grow and feeling they can provide for a woman what it takes for her to grow in vulnerability and happiness and joy, then men's dopamine levels stay up. So this whole journey into vulnerability and what it is, it's a topic of many books today. And I often see it as very limited to somehow vulnerability is just that you've hurt me and I can't trust you. It's about identifying your needs.
Yeah.
That's what vulnerability is. And the sign of vulnerability is not I'm just crying. That could be one sign of it, but also happiness and joy is a major expression of vulnerability. And it's based upon this whole wisdom of recognizing women accessing their inner wisdom is to know that, you know, being on my own, making money, and it's not enough. I'm not going to fall into this illusion of capitalism that, you know, money is everything, but that love, balance with a abundant life is the only way to be happy and fulfilled. Is that you've got to find this love inside, and then money's not even that important. It's still important, and independence is important, but love is so important for both men and women. But more important for women because they are the primary source of love. When women love a man, he mirrors it back. Okay, men are just, when they're too far on their female side, they're not feeling love. They're feeling needy and demanding and unappreciative. And that it's when a man provides for a woman that she responds with love, appreciation, trust, admiration, acceptance, forgiveness, is when she responds from her female side, which is the part of us that can do all of that. It turns on his mirror cells and he's able to feel those things in response to her.
Mm-hmm.
So what I have to do as a man, if I'm not feeling love, is provide a kind of support that allows my partner to feel appreciation. And then I can feel more love for her. But women, if you're not feeling love for a man and you provide something for him to love you, it doesn't necessarily make you feel loved. He's just happy you did it and he doesn't do more for you. So the challenge for women is not giving more to get more. The challenge is stop trying to change him and you will get more. And that's the 4 steps I mentioned before and I never filled out. The first step is notice all the ways you try to change him and realize it's not going to work. That's your monkey brain. That's your manipulative brain. That's your controlling brain, and change yourself. That's step 2. So if you're unhappy with him, don't notice what you do to try to change him and realize that will not work. Step 2, do what it takes to change yourself so you're not doing that anymore. You're dissatisfied. Well, dissatisfaction is your job to be happy. That's your job, to find your happiness, not to change him. And so you do that by understanding the things that will balance your hormones. And then your hormones come into balance, your stress levels go down, your anxieties go away, and you're naturally happy and fulfilled and loving. So find the loving part of you by changing yourself. Step 3 is when you're feeling more loving and you're not resenting, because you have taken responsibility for creating happiness in your life, not being overly dependent on him. Now you give more. Step 3 is give more, but give what he needs. Now, ironically, if you're a woman, how do you give more to a man? You give him the opportunity to do things for you. Give him the opportunity to do things for you and appreciate what he is already doing for you, to appreciate, forgive his mistakes, and to ask for more in small increments. And that's step 4, is once you start giving him what he needs, which is to build testosterone, you want to increase a man's testosterone by expressions of appreciation, forgiveness, and acceptance. Ironically, my wife can appreciate me for doing something. I will feel loved. I actually feel more love when I do something wrong and she forgives it. That's what you have to understand, is the way you give love for men is how do you respond to their behaviors? And what men have to learn is how to do the little things that allow women to respond to your behaviors. It's both sides, but I'm not talking to men now. I'm giving them a whole lesson on it. How to create romance, how to listen to women. These are all skills, as well as how to provide the support a woman needs around the home on a domestic level. So these are all new awarenesses as men and women are in equal relationships. Equal relationship, does that mean that every job in the household we take turns doing? That's nonsense. You know, do you take turns emptying the trash? Do you take turns fixing the roof leak? Do you take turns talking to the neighbor about a problem you have with them? No. Do you take turns driving the kids to school? Do you take turns making dinner? Do you take turns doing the laundry? You got to find your jobs that work for both of you. So you're a partnership again, where she's doing particularly more things that stimulate the nurturing hormones. And for him, to stimulate more things that stimulate the problem solving hormones, the emergency things, the more difficult, uncomfortable things. And you work it out so both people are helping each other. In my household, for example, I don't wash dishes. I actually made that deal with my wife when I married her. I said, amazing husband, that I don't wash dishes. And of course, during pregnancy, I said, during this time, I'll wash dishes. And now what I do is I say, I don't wash dishes, but if ever you want help, I will help you. And if ever you want me to do the whole thing, I will do the whole thing because I'm here for you. And so she can ask me whenever she wants. And then it's an emergency. And then it's much more appreciated as opposed to just something that, you know, that's your duty, that's your duty. We take each other for granted. The great thing for men is that for a man to be available for whatever a woman needs means he's her hero. But she has to be able to respond like he's your hero, that she really needed his help, as opposed to, well, you should do that. There's no shoulds. You take shoulds out of a relationship and you come back to what works best to help both of you be your authentic self.
Yeah.
So those are some insights. You know, a great sex life is a key to this, but you can't have a great sex life if you don't have a polarity where she is, when in relating to him, she is able to feel a huge surge of estrogen where she depends on him for certain things that she doesn't depend on anybody else for. And he needs to feel that she depends on him for certain things that she doesn't depend on for anybody. She said, you know, it's like my wife says, but you're the one I kiss goodnight, you know, not everybody else. So that's the specialness of a relationship. And as you can see from our short little interview today, it's very complicated. I'm so glad you're part of this summit, which there'll be so many speakers talking about their ways of improving communication between men and women. And hopefully you walk out of this talk knowing that we need new insights, new skills, and it's not an easy task at first. It's like learning a software. And I'm very much aware that as I zoom through many of the ideas in this new book, it can sound very, very complicated. It was very complicated for me to come up with all of this, and then it became very simple. So once you understand the new software, boy, does life get easier for you. But there's so much more. But I think I've given you a good beginning of knowing the direction to go to, which is to stimulate estrogen, conversation, and romantic dates where you're being more vulnerable. How do you do that? You practice something called the Venus Talk. And the Venus Talk is where you just go to your husband, boyfriend, just say, I wouldn't do it on beginning dates. This is more, you're more in a relationship, but you would you go to them and say, oh, I had such a challenging day today. I just want to share what happened, then I'll feel good. And I want to just feel closer to you so you know what happened, but you don't have to fix it. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to do anything about it. Just listen and I'll feel better. Then talk for about 8 minutes about frustrations, disappointments, concerns, wishes, wants. And then for a couple of minutes, talk about how good you feel and appreciative you are, how lucky you are to have your job. Just shift gears automatically so he doesn't feel like he has to fix you now. And thank him. Go in for a big hug and then go into another room. Just let him sit there and take that in, that, wow, all I did is just listen and she felt better. This is a whole new experience for men, that actually listening and doing nothing can actually be the best solution to her problem. And you use him for that and you appreciate him for that. And do that several times a week. Because if you don't share what goes on at work, those feelings build up and they turn into complaints about him. But if you're sharing about things outside of the job, outside of your relationship, because you're not expecting him to do anything about it, there's no to do, it's not a complaint. And he can begin to slowly experience a transformation in the male brain, which is able to hear problems without having to jump to a solution, but to realize by simply listening, you are solving the problem. This is a new experience for men. It's a learning stage. After several years of this, now my wife can be upset with me, and I know that this is just a temporary thunderstorm, and I just need to get her to talk. The skills I would teach men, and you can always say to your partner, I don't need you to fix anything, but it would like you to say occasionally, help me understand that better. Tell me more. You can say what else. 3 simple phrases, and helps to draw her into conversation more. Because when you're stressed, women, and you can articulate and express what you feel, your estrogen levels will go up. But if you're articulating, expressing what you feel about him, what will happen, his defenses will go up and your testosterone will go up in defense back. So that's not a healthy place to be. The place to go is first learn to stop trying to change him, use him to come back to your female side, give him more love, and then start asking more of what you want. And as you start getting what you want, as you start opening up more, all those trust issues just disappear, because this wisdom comes forth, the wisdom of knowing what is possible, what is not possible, and when it comes to what is possible, how to get there and how long it will take. Because it's not everything in life that's real is gradual. It's gradual. But in that acceptance of that aspect of life, you begin to experience peace and love and greater joy.
Yes. Thank you, John. You have given us so many powerful insights and a lot of great explanation around what it really takes to navigate the challenges in today's relationships with the gender roles, how to always go to love.
Thank you so much for spending your time with Dr. John Gray and I today. I hope you gleaned some really amazing insights as to how to create the miracle of love and connection in your relationship. To further enhance that, there's a very special gift I have for you. It's a 15-minute meditation that will allow you to connect with that beautiful diamond power within you, that beautiful all that is, that beautiful divine love that will make it so much easier to show up in your relationship as the presence of love. All you have to do is go to diamondpowertv.com and you'll be able to immediately access the meditation. Until next time, believe in the miracle in you.